past president, Holly Harden, and our current president, John Nissel, to do some awards from last year and this year.
Okay.
Great.
Oh, go ahead.
No, Terry, I want you to start. Terry is our past president, and Terry was, well, unfortunately, we weren't able to meet last year.
It's Holly, not Terry.
I mean, sorry, Holly. I'm sorry, Holly. Holly and Terry, get those two confused. But anyway, last year we were not able to meet as a conference, and subsequently we weren't able to meet as a conference this October. So Holly didn't really have a good opportunity to present two very important awards that would normally have been presented at the conference. So Holly, I want to turn this over to you to present your two awards, and I'll get on with my first quarter award.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Terry. I know this was so much work to get this meeting. I think Terry had 4 practice meetings, and thanks to Cheryl and Derek Thompson for helping out too. But thanks, John, for giving me this opportunity, because we all love to gather together. We're a very touchy group, so we'll have to see how this looks in the future. So the first award I'd like to give out is Member of the Fourth Quarter, and as you can see, this is giving recognizing someone who gave us great service during the last quarter of the year, and this would have been given during conference. So please join me in congratulating Nancy Pfeffer as your member of the fourth quarter. As Sponsorship and Resource Development Chair, Nancy worked tirelessly to seek out meaningful opportunities to connect sponsors to the association and creative ways to generate revenue. Nancy created the very fun Krabby Ball Drop. It was a unique fundraiser with online platform for ticket sales. Anyone, anywhere could purchase a ticket for the event. Nancy also worked out the logistics with Queen Anne's County, thank you to Queen Anne's County, and promoted the event. She also created another new event, the Camp Vendor and Resource Fair. For this, she secured vendors, advertising, sponsorships, promoted the event, and even manned the registration table. Nancy continues to provide invaluable contributions to the annual Celebrating Excellence Awards Luncheon. On her own, she secured 40 different donations that were offered at the very successful silent auction. She also secured a sponsor for the awards themselves. These contributions made this year's event the most financially successful ever. On short notice, Nancy was able to secure vendors for the brand new Special Events Summit, as well as serving as a wonderful presenter. She continues to secure as many sponsors as possible for the professional learning communities, and this allows us to keep these events free and continue our mission for those events. Nancy ensures that every sponsor that contributes or supports an event receives a handwritten thank you card. It is the pride in her work and the goal of growing the reach of the association that makes her a deserving member of the quarter. Congratulations, Nancy. Are you there, Nancy? Can you say hi? Well, Nancy's there somewhere. Well, congratulations to Nancy.
Thank you. Sorry,
I
was talking to myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. You've done such an amazing job, and you've been really inspirational. It's been so great. What you've given to the association, I can't thank you enough. You're just amazing.
Thank you.
Good job, Nancy. Yay. All right, the next award that we're going to be giving is the Outstanding Member of the Year. And this is usually given out at our banquet when we're all dressed up and we get to clap and we're all ready for a fancy night. So we're doing it virtually, but we are going to be able to give these awards out at conference next year. So thanks to John for allowing that to happen so people can get recognized in person by their peers. But we wanted to take this moment to congratulate the Outstanding Member of the Year. And as you can see, this is someone who made a significant contribution to the association through all their hard work. So please join me in congratulating your Outstanding Member of the Year, Janine Blakely. Janine served as the chair of the Training and Education Committee, where she coordinated the Professional Certification Board, Conference Education Committee, Rich Stevenson Leadership Institute, Professional Learning Communities, Branch Representatives, and Speakers Bureau. Despite losing her co-chair in the first quarter, she was able to efficiently and effectively lead the committee, as well as move forward on 2 new major initiatives, the Special Events Summit and Recreation University. With Recreation University, Janine was involved in the earliest phases, developing a vision and goals for the program, meeting with speakers, working with the executive director, and recruiting leadership for the program. Janine oversaw program promotion and sought to maintain program quality. The other new effort was the Special Events Summit. For this program, Janine began completely from scratch. She worked to activate new members, to form a committee to make this idea a reality. Over many months, she refined the schedule and consistently sought to develop a program to appeal to the MRPA membership and beyond. Always a strong communicator, Janine worked diligently to keep her team informed and the project on track. During this very, very busy year for Janine, she served on the NRPA Local Host Committee as co-chair of Offsite Institutes. These education-based excursions involve months of work, soliciting sessions, coordinating with speakers, confirming transportation, working with host agencies, gathering CEU documentation, arranging refreshments, developing marketing materials, and on-site staffing were just some of the varied responsibilities of this committee. The results of her efforts were 15 successful Offsite Institutes attracting over 200 participants and a significant financial contribution to MRPA. Janine has been a role model and a mentor in the leadership of the Training and Education Committee. She holds herself to the highest professional standards. She's always striving to do her best and questioning how she can do better. And Janine, you know you do this. Janine continued to hold conference calls and send meeting notes even when handling family illness, flooded basements, and other challenges. Thank you, Janine, for all your hard work, and congratulations on being chosen Outstanding Member of the Year. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you. That was very good. Thank you all very much. I have loved every minute of it, every part of being involved with MRPA. So thank you.
Thank you, Janine. I appreciate you. You're wonderful.
Well, Holly, that was wonderful. Thanks for making that presentation. I think there might be somebody that's not on mute. I'm getting a lot of background noise, so please check yourself. If you're not on mute, put yourself on mute. Thank you. So I have the honor and privilege to award the first quarter of MRPA Quarterly Award, which gives credit to and recognition to an MRPA member who has contributed to the improvement of the association through their involvement and accomplishments during each quarter. This was a tough one. We had several nominations that were put forward, and it was a tough decision on behalf of the board and council. It was very close, but this person is Steve Miller, who is the director of the Wicomico County Recreation, Parks, and Tourism. And Steve represented our entire profession by synthesizing multiple documents to form a recommendation document sent to the governor's COVID-19 task force on behalf of all the park and recreation professionals. Steve spent countless hours editing said document while incorporating feedback from all the departments. His professionalism and dedication made this product that we all could feel proud of. In fact, many departments around the state utilized and edited this document to present their own reopening suggestions to their administrators, councils, and commissioners. It should not be overlooked that he did all this in the midst of trying to navigate his own department through their reopening COVID-19 plans. A little bit of background: every week, once COVID started, MRPA has hosted director check-in meetings every Thursday. It's been very helpful. We've been getting probably 80% participation on these director check-ins. And early on in the game, a lot of questions came up about how we can influence the governor and his plans for reopening with respect to park and recreation agencies. And Steve really stepped up and took the lead and got with the governor's task force and put a questionnaire out about where we were with our park opening plans with respect to COVID. Steve took all that information and created a wonderful matrix. In fact, Montgomery Parks uses this matrix today to kind of help us figure out what phase we're going to be opening up what amenities in. And this document has been shared around the state, and I really want to give Steve kudos. This was a huge lift, a big effort. It took a lot of coordination with all the agencies across the state, the park and recreation agencies across the state, and to actually worm his way into the governor's task force and try to influence them on how we open as an agency, because as you know, we're very important to the health and wellness of our constituents across the state. Kind of consider ourselves as sort of the last refuge for a place where people can get out. So I want to congratulate Steve. You did an amazing job. Steve, I don't know if you're out there, but your face is in everybody's face. And I just want to thank you very much. This was wonderful. So with that, I'm done. I'll turn it back over to Terry.
Hi, I'm back. So before I stop my screen sharing and start to allow Rich to do his screen sharing, I'm going to introduce Rich Dolesh, and we will be having our session of how Parks and Recreation will change forever. I'm going to stop that share so Rich can get set up, and while I do his introduction. Rich Dolesh has worked for Parks, Recreation, and Conservation for nearly 50 years, beginning his career in 1972 as a part-time park naturalist at the Patuxent River Park for the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission in Prince George's County. Rich eventually became the division chief of the Natural and Historical Resources Division, went on to work at Maryland DNR as the director of the Forest, Wildlife, and Heritage Service for several years, and wound up at NRPA as senior policy associate in the Public Policy Office. He became chief of public policy, then vice president of conservation and parks, and then vice president of strategic initiatives, till he retired in February of this year after 17 years at NRPA. In 2019, Rich received the Cornelius Armory Pugsley Medal Award by the American Academy of Parks and Recreation Administration, an award recognizing outstanding contributions to the field of public parks and conservation in the United States. Over the years, Rich has written extensively on parks, recreation, and conservation. His recent work includes tracking top trends in parks and recreation, exploring the role of parks in adapting to the impacts of climate change, and assessing the impact of private funding for public parks. His topic today, how parks and recreation will change forever, will be of keen interest to all of us. There you go, Rich.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction and the invitation to be the keynote speaker for the general membership meeting today. It was fun to do the breakout rooms. We spent our time trying to come up with reasons why it was better to do this by Zoom than to drive over to the Eastern Shore on a stinking hot day and sit out in the sun and have to eat crabs and drink beer. But it's so much better this way, isn't it? Anyway, we got to make the best of it, and I appreciate the invite, and I'm going to try and make it fun too. The topic today, how Parks and Recreation will change forever, sounds kind of portentous and maybe even pretentious, but in some ways it is. We're facing profound changes in the field and in the profession of Parks and Recreation. In some ways, it's not a stretch to say that Parks and Recreation will change forever. Because of the pandemic, because of the momentous changes that are happening in our society, and the profound economic recession that's going to hit us and will probably doubly impact us in Parks and Recreation. It will change us forever, or at least for such a long time, we won't remember what the old normal was like. But like I say, I want to keep it kind of fun today, and let's involve all of you, if we can, in an interactive way too. So here's how it will go. I'm going to make a few brief remarks about how Parks and Recreation will change forever, but I'd like to start with some polling questions in a moment. And then many of you have read my articles in Parks and Recreation magazine about top trends. I've written them for 4 years now, annually at the beginning of the year. And people get a lot of good charge out of them. And I also have done a session at the conference, and I figure that many of you perhaps did not attend the conference. So I want to do a brief condensed version of my top trends presentation. I was invited to the British Columbia Recreation and Parks Association just before the pandemic locked everything down. So I want to show you some slides and make some comments about what I think are top trends that are coming in the field, and we'll have some fun with this. So, and as time permits, we'll do some questions and answers, Q&A at the end of this, and discussion. So, Holly, I'm not sure, or Terry, who's going to do the polling questions? So if you're ready, can you bring them up? Okay.
Sure.
There are 7 questions, so we'll go through them fairly quickly, but it'll take a little bit to dive into them. So read them carefully, and then pick your choice.
Does everybody see the questions?
So if you can't, maybe I'll just read them quickly as we go through them. So what's the level of concern among Parks and Recreation staff in your agency about becoming exposed to COVID-19? And consider all your staff, the people out on working in parks, doing maintenance, working in the office, frontline, conducting programs, or at welcome desks. So just check which box you think. Holly, will we see a summary of this? How will we see the results?
I think so. We should.
Do you have to close the question, or?
Yeah, I can close. I can end the polling. Oh, you cannot see boxes.
Oh, somebody says they can't see the boxes.
I guess depending on what device you're on, if you're not, some things don't show up if you're on a phone.
I did them.
Yeah.
There's only 2 questions.
Holly, Cheryl's here. She could see them. And those 2 questions, once you hit close, I think you can share the results.
Okay, do you want me to close the poll?
Well, close it, and then you can bring it back up, right? Since we go through the questions. Yeah, everybody only, you see one question at part of the second.
Okay, closing the. Okay, share results.
Okay.
Okay.
No fears. Everybody, a very low percentage that have no fears. And the biggest is some worry staff has brought concern to management, and we're working through solutions, 50%. But almost 30% have a high degree of concern or extremely high degree of concern. So 49%, almost half, are really worried about how your agency is handling it and what the potential is for staff being exposed. Okay, let's go on to question number 2. Oh, you already got, whoops, I lost them. Oh, nuts. I don't know how to bring the poll back up.
Okay, let me see if I can get. Okay, Rich is. I think I gotcha. All right, here we go.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Does everybody see it?
We lost. It's coming back as number 1 and 2. So can you summarize, Holly, the results of the second question?
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Well, the second question, maybe somebody can jump in here, was do you believe that you'll have less volunteer participation when limited or full reopening occurs, especially among older adults? So yes, likely to lose more than 75%, 50%. Thank you. From user to everyone says the highest percentage was 58% said 50% will lose volunteers. I personally believe it's going to be higher, but part of my prepared remarks, I'm going to allude to some of these questions. Okay, let's do what is actually question number 3. Do you think it'd be a good idea to have paid part-time park ambassadors whose primary duties would be to be stationed at entrances and circulate in high public use areas to encourage people to wear masks and keep social distancing? So yes, we have them already. Yes, it would be a great addition. Don't know, want to maybe try it out before we committed, and no, we don't see a need for them at this time. And then answer the second question too, that is on the screen. Do you think your agency will commit to restarting before school and after school program when schools reopen, even if only on a limited basis? Yes, we'll be in lockstep with our school system. Not sure, many details to be worked out. Not necessarily, we have concerns above and beyond what schools will do, or no, we will not resume before and after school activities when our local public schools open. Oh, and I can actually see the third question, which would be number 4. I'm sorry, number 5 in the sequence that I have. There's 7 total. When do you think in-person activities and programs for seniors will return to full participation? Within 6 months, as soon as we can assure necessary PPE for participants and staff and social distancing requirements, maybe a year, and we'll at least need to wait to see what recent surges die down. Not until there's a vaccine and widespread public vaccination. And fourth, not in the foreseeable future, likely more than 2 years. So answer all 3. And then Holly, bring them up in a moment.
Okay, just tell me when you want me to close it.
Okay. Okay, let's close it.
Okay.
Park ambassadors, 44% would like to see them. 36% not sure, let's try it out. And 14% say no. And 8% say they have them already and are making a difference. When we get to the end and do a Q&A, can maybe somebody make some comments or chat some comments, and what agency are you from? And that would be helpful to everybody to know if you're using them already. Chicago Park District is using them. Miami-Dade County is using them. New York City has a huge core of park ambassadors now. Okay, number 2. Do you think your agency will commit to restarting before school and after school programming when schools reopen? 56% say still uncertain. 32% say yes, as the school goes, so will we. 10% may not, and 3% say they will not when the public school system opens. So high percentage, about 85% or more say either you're going to do it or you're still working on it. And about 15% say not necessarily. Okay, third question is, when do you think in-person activities and programs for seniors will return to full participation? And by a big margin, 63%, until a vaccine and widespread public vaccination. That's my belief too. And I think that it will be 2 years till that comes, or close to it. But that's just a personal opinion. So 30% say a year, and we'll need to see recent surges and spikes die down. Okay, last 2 questions. Can you bring them up, Holly?
Should be. All right, third poll coming up.
Okay, this one has a lot of hooks in it. Will the public generally be willing to give up a certain amount of personal privacy to participate in programs, enter community centers for fitness activities, and allow contact tracing, or for other park and rec security and public safety reasons? Oh, there's a little duplicate on that one, Holly, on the first question, which would be number 6. Let's, if you all can make this correction. So there's A, temperature checks, B, RFID or geotagging, and then the third choice on that question is installing a mobile app to allow contact tracing. So will your patrons allow you, will they voluntarily do an Apple or Google locator, supposedly anonymous locator, to allow contact tracing if you were ever to become infected? And the last one is facial recognition scan to allow cashless transactions and no touch entry and other biz. So the third choice is mobile app. Will people agree to a mobile app? And the last question, do you agree with this statement? Dogs are children too. I'll come back to that question later.
Okay.
That's my son. I can't stop those. Can't talk by. You can do that to your son.
All right, I think you're good on the results. You mean to close
All right,
this one,
good.
Rich?
Bring them up.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Temperature checks about 100%. I think that's going to be a given. RFID tagging, and I'll come back to that too. And the third one was mobile app to allow contact tracing and facial recognition. Wow, interesting. Almost 10% for both. All right. Are dogs children? 50% and almost 50 both ways. So at least 50% of you believe your dogs are part of your family. And I'll come back to that one too when we do a little top trends.
Okay.
Okay, that's fun. Let's so you kind of get a sense of where people are in the field, who and what you think is going to be the progress of coming out of COVID-19 and returning to some sort of new normal. So let me make a few remarks, and then we'll go to talk about top trends. I tackled this subject about how Parks and Recreation will change forever as an article for Parks and Recreation magazine, and it's coming out in the August issue. In fact, you're getting the first preview of what I've tried to do on this is to look at the most significant impacts of what COVID-19 are and how they're going to affect us. And my belief was, and my premise was, that these are such profound changes that are happening to the business and the field of Parks and Recreation that they will ultimately change us forever. And yeah, I know, maybe not forever, but for such a long time that it's going to feel like forever. And I'm just taking this as kind of a working hypothesis that what's happening will be changes, that are, I mean, some of you who are older can think back that when you got on a plane, you just walked up to the gate, got in line, and walked on the plane. There wasn't any sort of huge security presence that checked you and frisked you and x-rayed you. But that's the way life is now, and it's going to be that way forever. It's not going to change. And there will be things, I believe, that happen in Parks and Recreation that are going to be the same kind of result. So take it as a premise, and let's kind of go through some of what I think are some of the biggest changes that are going to come. Number one, and this is a positive change, largely a positive change if we capitalize on it and make the best out of it. And that is that Parks and Recreation are going to be regarded by the public as more essential than they ever were before. particularly local parks and recreation. After the pandemic shutdown occurred, there was a huge surge of people who wanted to recreate in local parks, to use trails, to go to beaches and public places and enjoy them with their family. And in fact, it was so great that many public park and rec agencies had to clamp down on the amount of use. And you see it today still with the reclosure of beaches in California and in Florida. There were too many people. It was too much of a good thing. And beyond the knuckleheads who would not wear a mask in public, the fear was that social distancing could not be maintained, and therefore close the beaches. It's a tough decision to make. There's tourism dollars and economic impact associated with that, and the public gets mad, and people are not happy. People who've traveled to come to utilize beaches or to stay for a few days at coastal areas or lakes, recreation destinations. But I think we can generally agree that parks and recreation got a big boost and have a stature perhaps that we haven't had in many, many years. And it's up to us, I believe, to capitalize on that, to show how we are part of the essential services of our community and of our region or our city and of our state, and to use that both as an economic impact driver, but as a public good, that we are even more important than anybody ever recognized before. And I think it's up to you to help tell that story. Tell the kind of people stories of what people have said to you in the parks, what kind of in-person contacts and even virtual contacts that you had with the public, and tell it from all perspectives, from those of kids, of families, of older adults, and make the case that we will need funding because we're heading for a big crash in terms of funding, and I'll describe a little bit about that. It's my belief that public systems that are grounded in the needs of local communities and neighborhoods, such as public parks and recreation, will be strengthened as a result of the pandemic instead of fractured. We have proven to be resilient, adaptable, flexible to meeting challenges, sometimes incredible challenges. And all of you have stories to tell about how you've risen to the occasion, or you've seen others in the field rise to the occasion and meet the moment. It's clear we're challenged like never before, or at least in our memory and careers and lifetimes. But you know, we're meeting the moment. We're serving the public, and the public appreciates it. And so those are two great reasons that parks and recreation are in the eye of the public and regarded as really important. And there's a value that's not been placed on parks and recreation before. So what's changed and why? And then what is the future going to be like? And I want to talk a little bit about the shape of parks, what parks are going to look like as a result of the pandemic, and talk a little about the shape of recreation, how the public will want to recreate and how we're going to need to adapt to meet those needs. A year or two ago, in looking at the impacts of the opioid addiction crisis, it was evident that there were things about park design that were going to occur. And those of you who are landscape architects or work in park planning, I think this will resonate with you that, perhaps at one time, public bathrooms were placed in out of the way spots that were shielded and screened from public view. And that's a logical and natural thing to have them like that. But as a result of opioid addiction problems in parks, clearly the design of the accessibility of public bathrooms, the placement of benches and seating areas in parks really have to move almost to a point of public view for the safety and security of everybody in the parks. And I believe as a result of the pandemic, there's going to be some physical changes in the design of parks. Some of them were the better and of interest to all of us. And let me give you a couple of examples. One of the things that will be clear is that park redesign will have to take into consideration social distancing. So instead of having places where people will be would be elbow to elbow, the circulation of people in outdoor spaces particularly and in indoor spaces will have to allow for social distancing as best as it can. And in some ways, that's going to be a cool thing. Many cities have now closed off streets to vehicular traffic and opened them up for pedestrian and personal transportation, micro-mobility devices or scooters or bicycles. That trend, I think, will improve, and it'll be integrated into new business plans for service businesses, especially dining and eating locations. So you see cities now that have allowed restaurants to expand beyond the sidewalk, perhaps into what was formerly a street, and allow for outdoor dining and creating walkable plaza type open spaces. Interestingly, I believe that trend is going to occur for mini and pocket parks too. You know, those of you who have read about Parking Day and the creation of mini parks and individual parking spots in cities. It's occurred in New York City and San Francisco as pioneers, but it's spread around the country to have tiny little pocket parks in parking spaces on public streets. I think that is going to expand, and there will public parks, or those who are creating public parks in dense urban areas, and this might be business improvement districts or other kinds of quasi-public-private entities, will expand boldly into how we can reclaim what was formerly dedicated to only vehicular transportation to a new way that people can walk or bike or human-powered motivate.
Hi, Rich, it's Holly. Reminder, if you share your screen so we can see your slides.
Oh, I'm just not ready yet. Okay.
Oh, okay, just wanted to make sure. And just a couple people said they're having difficulty hearing you.
Oh, really? Okay, let me see. Is this any better? If you're having trouble,
your volume just went up, so maybe that's supposed to be.
Yeah, I think I actually was inadvertently covering it.
Okay,
so
we'll take anything.
Good. All right. If not, do it in the chat function that you can't hear me. So what about recreation? How will recreation change? And what will we need to do to adapt it? And I think one of the ways it's going to change a lot in high-use public areas is the notion of park ambassadors. And I asked that question. It was interesting to see the responses. A number of cities are now moving toward hiring of park ambassadors, and it's had two benefits particularly. One is employing a lot of people who are otherwise out of work. Miami-Dade hired 800 park ambassadors under an impossibly short time frame, and they have a huge special event core of people who work temporarily or kind of in a gig economy that all their concerts and outdoor special events were canceled at the drop of a hat. They hired school crossing guards too to be part of this core. And these people are equipped to do nothing other than encourage wearing of masks in public park areas and maintaining social distancing. And they're instructed not to confront people or to get into any kind of a difficult personal blowback. They only use their cell phones for communications, but they're monitored on a continuous basis, and there's a quick reaction capability by their law enforcement and park police and city police. It's a cool idea. Chicago's gone to it. New York has thousands of people now they're employing on a part-time basis to act in that park ambassador capacity. it goes to court activities, to outdoor public use areas, plazas, trails, and other places. And I think that the pandemic, and as long as it takes for this to affect us and to keep social distancing, there's going to be a need for us to consider it in terms of recreation. And there will be some longer term impacts too. What's going to happen with youth sports, for example? If kids, you know, there's an elite pay to play class of sports where kids who are playing on travel teams or school programs have training ability and skills development places and ways to continue in their sporting interest or their sports interest. And others are simply don't have it. They won't have transportation to get to those places. They don't have the ability to get in a pay to play situation. And will it be that kids who spend months or a year not playing any sports or doing any skills development kind of leave that behind and don't come back to it? What will be the role of Parks and Recreation in creating some sort of bridge to keep kids engaged in youth activities and sports? So it's something you may want to consider looking at in your own agency. You know, did you drop youth athletics, and what are your plans for getting kids engaged again? So the business of Parks and Recreation, I think, is another aspect of what's going to happen to us. And this is something that you need to be really aware of, whether, no matter what level of the organization you're in, whether you're in management, frontline staff, or even an hourly employee or part-time non-careers or seasonal employee. We're going to face a really heavy economic reckoning as a result of the pandemic. Budgets, as you've seen, if you've been paying attention on what's happening in Congress right now with this last funding bill before the election for economic relief, states and local governments are in dire financial conditions. There's been virtually no tax revenue to come in from financial activity that's generated by Parks and Recreation. Property taxes are going to take a big bite out of people's available disposable income. And in our own agencies, we've lost revenue from fees and charges dramatically. And usually an average agency is making about 30% of its operating budget on fees and charges. And I don't know how many of you have and what percentage you're still getting from fees and charges, but my guess it would be in the low single digits. So this is a double whammy that's going to go to a triple whammy, because in the last recessions, NRPA tracked, and there's been some researchers who have done really quality work. John Crompton, the professor emeritus from Texas A&M University, who's tracked financial health of public parks and recreation since the 1980s. And more recently, Andy Mao and two of his colleagues at Penn State University, who analyzed the impacts of the recession of 2008 and 9, show something that has occurred in every recession that has happened since the early 90s. And that is that Parks and Recreation were among the first to be cut and among the most to be cut by public sector agency cuts. So when you stack up education, public safety, fire and police, libraries, Parks and Recreation took it on the chin. And it's going to happen in this recession too. And the worst part about it is, in every recession, Parks and Recreation return slowly to the amount of funding that they got, but as a proportion of local government spending, it took over 10 years to come back to the kind of balance point of what it was before. And Andy Bowen's predictions are that this recession will take even longer. So we're not looking at financial hits for next year, the year beyond. We're looking at a financial picture that's going to be affecting Parks and Recreation for 10 years or longer. And it's going to be a big difference, I think, in how we do things. And I made the point of looking at what is called in now by workforce planning experts, the disposable worker. And are we headed toward that we hire workers who we give no or few benefits to because we can't afford it, but people are desperate for jobs and they'll take a low wage, no benefit job that then becomes our workforce. And then when times are lean or budgets have to be cut, those are the first to go. I think that the future is that everybody's got to have health insurance, and it's going to be a critical need as people look for a job. And Parks and Recreation, if you want to maintain and attract talented people and retain good people, that's got to be a part of it, the equation somehow. We don't want to contract out our workforce, and we don't want disposable workers. We hope to have a career opportunity and a career path for the workers that we get and train and keep. So the last thing that I think is going to be a big effect on public parks and recreation is, well, two things. One, first is a greater orientation toward health and equity. We've seen parks and recreation move toward a greater orientation toward environment and environmental quality through the aspects of response to climate change, through the implementation of green infrastructure practices, and to the whole movement to connect kids and people to nature. These have been great initiatives that our field has taken on. And we came later to the orientation of that we are a part of the health network, keeping people's public health and individual health vital. And when the pandemic hit, a lot of things were disrupted. One were the summer food and feeding programs for kids. We're the Parks and Recreation is the second largest provider of meals for children after public schools. So basic nutritional needs for kids were highly disrupted, and we don't know when they're going to come back or how they're going to come back, even if we start to have modified programming, summer camps and things like that. But we are getting drawn in on a greater basis to food security and nutrition for people. And as we start to do things like farm to table, cooperative agriculture, CSA programs, community gardening programs, and nutrition and feeding programs for kids, we're going to play a greater and greater role in health equity and in health provision. My prediction is that there will be agencies that start to hire health workers as parks and recreation workers. You're starting to see social services workers in libraries now. And we may even wind up having both health and social services workers that become a part of a parks and recreation team. So it's most needed too in communities of color and poor communities where the impacts of disenfranchisement and lack of food, the presence of food deserts are hitting people the most. And as we've all seen in the pandemic, Black Americans and communities of color are affected most, having as much as 3 to 4 times the impact of coronavirus infections and of death rates. So finally, I just want to comment that I think one of the bigger things, when I started writing this article about Parks and Recreation changing forever, I thought it was going to be about the COVID-19 impacts, and that was all. And I realized in the midstream that no, it's a lot bigger. The Black Lives Matter movement swept over us like a firestorm, and is now really starting to make an impact among vast proportion of Americans who believe that there has been systemic racism that has affected Black people in America, and it has to be addressed and corrected. Also during that time, combined with a recession that's impacting people of color at highly disproportionate rates. So the notion of how racism is a health emergency, a public health crisis, is taking shape. The Pew Center for States has noted that there's 4 states and 20 cities that have adopted resolutions already that say racism is a public health crisis. And I think that's going to guide us and affect local governments and municipal governments in a big way going forward. And I did an interview with Dietrich Stanford, who is a former Parks and Rec Department director of Clayton County, Georgia. He's now the chief operating officer of the county. And he said, if we're fighting health inequalities, we're fighting racism. And fighting health inequalities means a whole range of social, economic, and health factors. And you know, his comment was that Parks and Recreation is on the front line of this, that we're some of the most resilient and most capable of meeting the challenge. And he believes if we're courageous enough and bold enough that we can make that difference. And I challenge all of you to look at what you're doing and to be open and willing to talk about it within your agency and to say, how can we use this as an opportunity to do the right thing? As I started out with this, I said Parks and Recreation will we return to normal? And I quizzed a couple of directors from around the country, and Mike Kelly of Chicago Park District said, yes, we will return to normal. But I think there was a general understanding our normal is going to look a whole lot different than the old normal, and it'll be such a long time till we get to that new normal. We may not remember what the old one was like. So, all right, I want to quickly, in the time I have left, to run through some slides that I think you're going to find a lot of fun about top trends in Parks and Recreation. And if we can share my screen, I'm going to go through these and make some annotated comments. So let me see if I can do this. Right. Okay, are you seeing my screen? Can somebody tell me yes?
Yes, we are.
Okay, all right, here we go. Let me shrink this is a presentation I did and have modified it slightly for the British Columbia Recreation and Parks Association in February, just before the pandemic came down. And I'm going to go through these really fast. So if you have some comments or questions, let's save them for the end or chat them. And if we can keep track of them, Holly, we'll bring some of them up for discussion. So as I said, for the past 4 years, I've been writing these articles on top trends in Parks and Recreation. And part of it is tongue in cheek, and part of it is kind of a serious look at where we're going and what's going to happen. So I'm going to just highlight a few of what I think are top trends that are coming to us and hitting us already and will change the way we do things in a big way. Micromobility devices, if you haven't yet seen the impacts of them, are going to affect a whole lot about how we manage and design trails, about the multiple uses of trails. And the question I have is, are park managers and park planners ready to meet this tide that is really going all over the country? Look at the trend lines since 2010 till 2018, which is the last full set of figures about shared micromobility devices in cities. This is going to be an even bigger impact about how in municipal locations that micromobility devices, scooters, dockless scooters, bikes, City of Austin, Texas banned micro scooters in their parks, and they found that every night there would be a pile of a dozen or 2 dozen scooters outside the entrance to some parks. There is a growing impact that is kind of sweeping over cities, and it will continue to do so. And the manufacturers and developers of these devices come into a city and dump 500 or 1,000 of them with no concern what the city regulations are. And they kind of hook people. Because once you've used one and once you've done it, you say, yeah, hell yeah, that's the way to go for the future. Outsourced data is going to demonstrate overwhelming value to local and urban parks. And ways that it will is through the measurement of environmental conditions, preventing urban heat islands, or reporting maintenance and safety violations, for geolocating the misuse of water and energy in parks. The public is going to be looking over your shoulder that if you are mismanaging the public assets, you'll hear it, especially in the West and the Southwest, where water use and profligate water use is really on people's minds. And you're going to have smart parks and smart benches. Here's one simple way. To get an air monitoring station up until just a couple of years ago cost about $10,000 per station. And it had to be operated by pretty sophisticated people who could read the results and collate the results. Low cost backpack wearable air monitors can be bought now for a couple $100. And there's communities that are now using them to get a real-time air pollution map of their community. They can actually identify where air pollution is bad. How this affects parks is that the best places in virtually every community for clean air are in and around your parks. So these real-time maps can direct people. And if you have a child with asthma or people with COPD type breathing problems, that this is really valuable. All of a sudden, the public and staff can start to identify where clean air is, and it's mostly in parks, and what a great selling point for our parks. The downside of the smart technology and Internet of Things is that people want to use it more and more, and you're going to have to step up your game to enable them to do it. And that if it goes down, you're going to create public reactions. And there's, it does require a fair amount of savvy and technology capability to do this right. And that's something that your agency is going to have to step up into. Here's some of the things that can and are being measured right now by Internet of Things and smart technology. So maintenance of water consumption, people movement, management of buildings and systems, parking, lighting, waste management, noise levels and acoustic levels, UV radiation, air quality, and pollution. I want to just quickly show you an example from Las Vegas, which is one of the smartest cities, surprisingly, and they've bought in a big way to creating a smart city. And they've got an innovation district that encompasses the Strip, and some of the things they're doing are very cool. These are high quality multi-sensor stations that are giving real-time information by the second as to what is happening within the community. And more, they're helping to direct city services and response times, law enforcement, public safety. This is a smart light, and these are being installed in and around and on the Strip. And multi-purpose sensors that not just have a camera that show visual sensors, but that also have a drone equipped on top, an autonomous drone that periodically lifts off the light, flies around, takes some real-time photos and data interpretation of what's happening, and then settles back down on the lamp and returns to report. LiDAR sensors and multispectral sensors are the thing of the future. They're doing a test here on what they call cognitive services park maintenance. So this is cloud-based analysis of what's happening in parks at the real time. And here's one of their examples is they can do a full scan on the system of all their parks and do things like, is the park littered? Now, you might say, oh, come on, all you have to do is look at it to tell whether it's littered. You don't need this. But in terms of smart technology, the idea of having data coming into a central administrative point and having one park maintenance supervisor look at all parks or pulling up parks that have obvious anomalies, that could be a whole lot easier, faster, and cheaper, and put a lot of park maintenance supervisors driving around in pickup trucks out of a job. I asked a question about whether people would be willing to be tagged with geofencing or RFID chips. It's already being done, and some park and rec agencies are doing this in a big way. San Diego Parks and Recreation, County of San Diego, has got geofencing all around their parks, and it helps them to do visitation counts in remote areas, parking lots, places where they don't have any eyes on the park. In terms of environmental conditions, the Las Vegas, as I mentioned before, while it might be working to be the smartest city in America, it's also a place where we never go outside, the fastest warming city from climate change in the country, and the place where the poorest residents are most at risk. We are facing profound changes from climate change. Have you noticed that we've now had about 25 days where the temperature has been above 90 degrees every day? In Phoenix, Arizona, the temperature is above 100 degrees over almost 120 days out of the year. So 115 days last year, the temperature exceeded 100 degrees, and it doesn't go down at night. The temperature never goes below 80, and oftentimes it doesn't go below 90. So what kind of impacts are we gonna face, and what our parks will be as reservoirs of protecting the last of the best of what's left? They will be huge challenges. The step up for us is that every park has to be designed with resiliency in mind. Parks are viewed as multi-benefit landscapes where green infrastructure, stormwater management, and flood prevention are designed into the parks, that shade and prevention of skin cancer, especially in high heat urban areas, that we start to implement and lead the way in cool pavements, green roofs, and renewable energy. And that parks would be used on a 24/7 basis, because in many places in the US, it's simply too hot and there's no shade to use parks during the daytime. We have to promote resiliency, not just in terms of environmental conditions, but also in terms of social and health resiliency, that people are connected to their parks and there's a social compact and social bond. That in terms of environmental and health reasons, that we're not using systemic pesticides. And I don't know if you followed some of the writing that I've done about glyphosate-based herbicides, Roundup, especially now, which has just been a giant $10 billion settlement with Bayer, the owner of Monsanto. People want to live and recreate in safe, healthy places. And we still have to manage for their health and control of invasive species and super weeds and what have you. I did an interesting interview with City Lab about why not use parks 24/7, because all over the world, especially in Asian countries, the parks are used, people recreate past 11 o'clock at night. And there's a movement now of runners and cyclists, and in fact, those who want to walk their dogs want to go out perhaps at 4 and 5 a.m. before they get ready to do their fitness workout and go to work. So this is a movement, and people don't understand, and elected officials don't understand, that it's going to double or triple the cost of operations, of maintenance, of security. So it's a trend coming, though. You're going to see greater push to have parks open after dark and usable after dark. I think you'll see a greater trend in the consolidation of city services. We in Maryland, I think, are more open to this than many municipalities or states even about the combination of park schools, of joint use agreements. But the notion of having a park system with parks and a school system with playgrounds, and neither are ever open for public use at the same time, or on weekends, school playgrounds aren't open, and other park and rec facilities might be closed at times where school kids can't use them. This is a really important and growing trend. I think I've talked a little bit about this, that Parks and Recreation will become more of a social services and health service provider. We're going to have to do more to address homelessness, to provide health services in parks and at community centers. We're already doing things like cooling centers post-disaster, but the notion of for older adult programming and care, preventing opioid abuse, and before and after school care, we're moving into the social services and health services business. I first talked about trends that we hope will not come to parks back when Zika, this whole Zika epidemic occurred, and the breeding of mosquitoes was taking place in public park areas, the two species that carry Zika. And I just noted this in this presentation, that vector-borne diseases, tick-borne diseases, may be flourishing in parks in a greater way as climate change increases conditions for their growth. This was all before the COVID-19 pandemic. And boy, are we going to be facing this in the future. Some other interesting things that are trends that we hope don't occur. I talked to the director of Oklahoma City in Oklahoma. State of Oklahoma passed a really open, a highly restrictive, for, I don't know how to best express this, but their open carry law was so explicit that people could carry anywhere at any time, basically, other than in public governmental buildings that the people who made the laws work, but especially in parks and community centers. And he had said they had a concert coming up with the Kings of Leon. They expected 20,000, 30,000 people. And he said, what are we going to do when everybody shows up with their AR-15s and wants to strut around in the concert? It's coming. And interestingly, Virginia just passed when they're the last elections, when a democratically controlled state house and governor who had been pushing for gun control laws, more restrictive gun control laws. It's the only locality and state in the nation that passed a law this year that said open carry is not allowed in parks or rec centers. And it was bitterly opposed by the gun rights groups and organizations. But they passed it, and we're seeing how it works out now. And I think more and more we're going to see video surveillance, and the pandemic is going to impacts are going to magnify that with touchless payments and possibly even facial recognition. Well, let me wrap up here with a couple of comments about the future of works and parks and recreation. I believe that it's a great career, and it's going to be somewhat recession proof. People want to recreate in public spaces, and we have a built-in job security that means we're not going to be displaced unless we're outsourced and it's then contracted out and done by a private sector organizations. We have great job satisfaction, but unless we fight tooth and nail, we're going to see fewer jobs with pensions and benefits and more outsourced work, more contractual employees in a contracted workforce. I believe that Parks and Recreation will demand of us that lifetime learning is required, so that regardless of what type of formal education or training you did to get into Parks and Recreation, you're going to have to continue to learn on a career-long basis to keep abreast and to keep ahead of things. And I think one of the big trend lines is going to be the digitalization of work. Take a look at this chart produced by Brookings Institution that estimates the number of jobs that will increasingly demand digital skills. And they rank this, the chart's a little bit hard to understand, but if you take low digital skills, medium digital skills, and high digital skills. So if you are working in a financial office or you're doing computer assisted design and park planning, or if you're out in the field doing maintenance work or aspects that don't really require you presently to have a lot of digital skills. But the movement from no change to less digital skills and more digital skills to the right. Look at the concentrations in every field of low digital skills, medium digital skills, and high digital skills. And those big dots, incidentally, are worth 3 million people. So as time goes on, or it has gone, just the backward look from 2002 to 16, this is what's happened to make digitalization of work more prominent. And if anything, it's going to accelerate in future times. So I asked you before, are dogs your children? And I just, a couple of random comments here about a few closing things. Dog parks are the fastest growing type of park in America. There's 90 million dogs now in America. And there is an understanding by the part of people, I believe, much more than you do, perhaps 50%, that dogs are part of your family. And therefore, the design and provision of dog parks and dog walking areas and accommodation of dogs in public parks is the trend line of the future. And if you're not on top of it and working for it now, you better get on it. So the last thing I want to tell you is I got really interested by a bill that was passed in Washington State last year that would allow the composting of human remains. And the more I thought about it, you know, we already do a lot of memorial programs and things that recognize people's value after their life is over. So we have memorial tree groves, we have park benches that are named after or dedicated to people. We have parks named after people. And as I read about how this was going to be done, I kind of dove into how is it actually done? And when I found out about it, it makes so much sense and it's so logical that there's a national movement to move away from traditional burial to start with, toward principally through cremation and incineration of remains. But the next evolution of that is a green burial, that you're somehow regenerating. You're not just burn up and your ashes disposed of, but you are giving back. And this is an example of a green burial portion of a cemetery in the Bellefontaine Cemetery is a historic big cemetery in St. Louis, Missouri. And they are trying to recreate a short grass prairie. So after these sections are filled up, they're then going to be kind of designed as prairie for a permanent conservation value. And the way in Washington State, this is what sold the legislature on passing the law, was this presentation by a company, a public benefit company called Recompose. And this was the artist rendition of what a indoor composting facility would look like. And when I saw it, I thought, well, what are they putting the bodies in those planter beds? And that's kind of how they're going to get composted. But no, in the back of the picture, you see those honeycomb beehive type structures. That's where you get composted. And they've done a number of these tests. So under pressure and with a little bit of liquid and maybe some wood chips, they can compost a body in about 4 weeks. And I talked to the CEO of the company of Recompose. I had an interesting conversation with her. And I said, well, how much compost do you produce out of this? And she said, well, about a cubic yard. I said, a cubic yard? I said, she said, well, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. We know that. But, you know, and people don't have to take it all. And in fact, she went on to say they are working with a nonprofit that's doing land conservation and restoration. So they will take whatever compost is produced and put them into reforestation projects. And you know, it's not a bad idea. I found that I was very warm to the idea that to think, well, am I going to go to a reforestation project or get planted in a park? And I asked her, I said, well, have you thought about parks as a possible way? And she said, oh, yes. She said, very much so. We think parks will be the highest and best use for this compost in the end. So, all right, I'm wrapped up, and I know I've gone long. I don't know if we have time for any comments or questions. But if you got a good trend, send it my way, dolish@gmail.com. So thanks, everybody, for your attention today. Do we have time for a few questions if people chat them in?
I'm going to let John answer that if he could unmute, but I'd also at this time like to have everybody put their cameras on and give Rich a big round of applause.
Thank you.
For spending the last hour with us, and we really do appreciate your insight and you sharing your knowledge with us here. And so at this time, I think Rich is going to stick around for our meeting as well, but I will turn it over to John if you want to do a few questions first, or I'm going to let that be up to you.
Yeah, don't feel you need to if you got to move on. So up to you.
Well, you know, Rich, wow, you know what, I'm really interested now in the composting thing. I never knew that. And I thought I was pretty hip on all the trends coming out. I think one of the things that we can take back from this whole thing is that the way Parks and Recreation is changing everybody's lives. And, you know, I talked a little bit earlier before you came on that COVID, if nothing else, is what it's taught us is the importance of Parks and Recreation agencies across the country to our constituents, because it is the last refuge. You know, they can't go to church, they can't go to the malls, they can't go to the movies, they can't go to dinner. So where do you go to escape the confines of your living space? And that's parks. And I think that that's a really critical thing. And I think that if I could predict the future, and Rich, maybe you can expound on this, I think that Parks and Recreation agencies will be studied at the university level for many, many years to come because of the role that we played during this whole pandemic and the importance that we've brought to everybody, and how we operated in a virtual world, continued to program without getting people and still practice social distancing. And what a great, you know, I think if there's a silver lining to all this, it's really changed the way we've operated. I think one of the other trends too that I've been preaching and talking about is the fact that a lot of our professionals, both on the state, the federal, the local, and even in the nonprofit world that deals with recreation and park agencies, YMCAs, Boys and Girls Club, a lot of our folks are going to be retiring out within the next 5 years. So we really need to put a strong emphasis on how we're going to train up our middle management people and prepare them for the upper level jobs that are going to be coming open very, very soon. And that's something I think that concerns us. I know it concerns me and my role as Deputy Director for Parks at Montgomery Parks, because we have to really look and see how deep our bench is. So, Rich, I'd love to bring you back to talk about a couple of those things and how we're trending as a profession in the field in the future. And it is a great field to get into. So with that, I think if folks have questions, they can throw it up on the chat, and perhaps Adrian can read some of those questions out to Rich, and we'll take maybe 5 or 10 minutes to allow Rich to answer some questions.
Yeah, well, let's take just a few, and I see you recording this, and I'm happy to respond to all the questions. I saw there were quite a few, and perhaps give some follow-up, and if you can share those with everybody that was here today, I'm happy to do that.
That might be a really good way to do that, Rich, since we are running a little late on time. perhaps what we can do is we can take the questions and we'll sort of group them into categories. And if we could shoot those out to you and we can do some follow-up answers, I think that'd be great, because I think our folks are really, really engaged in what you have to say. Does that sound like a good idea to you?
Yeah, sure. And know that I'm not officially working for NRPA any longer. I still am continuing to write as an editor at large for NRPA. So, but know that this is, not officially done on NRPA's dime anymore, and nor their official position. And I often would get way out on a limb anyway. So it's not like they claim they were the official position. But I'm going to continue to look at this whole idea of trend, what our trends are and what's happening in the future. So I'm really interested to hear if you have contributions or ideas or kind of, what do you think is going to happen? Please share those with me. Dolish@gmail.com. Real simple. And once you get these, perhaps you can include my email address in my responses to everybody.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Rich, so much. So at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and call our general membership meeting, and I would encourage everybody to stay on because we've got some important information we want to share with our general membership. So I'm going to call the meeting to order and welcome everybody again. This is our very first virtual summer membership meeting. And, we had over 157 people register, which represents over 31 agencies and 3 private constituents or private businesses from across the state. So this was an amazing turnout. And I think that a lot of this has to do with Rich and your presentation and your stature in the organization or in the industry. And so with that, I want to introduce Chuck Montre, MRPA Executive President or Executive Director. And Chuck, you have a few words you want to say?
Thank you, John. First, a big thank you to Rich. I always love listening to Rich. Has become quite the sage in our industry. And I do want to share, Rich and I go way back when we were back in our park and planning days. And Rich would come through the office and he earned the name Pigpen, not because there was a lot of dust swirling around him, but because there were so many ideas in his head that he would leave and we would all just sit back and sigh and go, we're exhausted, because he was just so full of great ideas and had a great career. And I'm happy to call him a friend. So thank you very much.
Wait a minute. They said I was full of other things in IT.
Well, I won't get into that. So thanks again. So just real quick, we continue, I think, to do really well as an association. We are obviously very challenged financially this year. I've said this many times, thanks to a lot of my predecessors and volunteers over the last 25 years to put this organization on strong financial footage. And I go to sleep at night knowing that we are going to continue that way. We are lucky enough to have a cash flow this year that will prevent us from having to dip into our financial reserves, which you all know are very healthy. As Rich talked about, though, this is going to be, I think, a long-lasting and deep recession that we're heading into. And so we are going to have to figure out a sustainable operation in the years to come. So we will be working on that with our treasurer and our board to see how that's going to happen. In that regard, though, we knew that the training dollars were probably going to be one of the first things to go. And so we were able to get our directors to see the wisdom of replacing what we would normally take in through our training dollars with an increase in our agency dues to cover what will now be for the next year. All of our one-day trainings will be free, whether they're a webinar, virtual, or whether they're in person. So that should be able to allow us to keep our numbers nice and strong. And as you all know, our attendance at our virtual trainings has been unprecedented the last 4 months. So we hope to be able to keep that thing up and going strong. That's it. We are working. We're taking turns going into the office. So I'm here today. Normally this is Armina's day on Wednesday. but we continue to keep the work flowing. So if anybody has any questions, that's it for me.
Great, Chuck. Thank you very much. And with that, let me just do a short report, short president's report before we get into board reports. Again, if you folks don't know me, my name is John Niss. I'm Deputy Director for Montgomery Parks and your MRPA President. And I want to begin by thanking my board and council, MRPA staff, and committee chairs for just an amazing first quarter. You know, since April, despite everything that COVID has handed us, we continue to offer high quality trainings, PLCs, the director check-ins every Thursday. And since April, we have probably registered over 1,000 professionals in our programs, PLCs, and director check-ins. So that is just an amazing statistic, and I really contribute that to our members, our professionals out there in the recreation and parks field. You guys have really stepped up to the plate and taken advantage of these programs, and we're going to continue to offer those. I can promise you that. In fact, today's presentation, as I mentioned earlier, brought staff together from over 31 agencies and 3 private affiliates across the state. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize President-elect Terry Hilton for pulling all this together. Terry, this was a huge lift, getting Rich in his busy schedule to come on, coordinating through Zoom, working through all the slides and the breakout rooms. It was just an amazing task. And Holly Harden, our past president, I want to thank you because I know you assisted Terry in a lot of the coordinating for today's program. So a big thank you to those folks. I also want to thank Rich again for delivering just an eye-opening presentation. I love trends. That's probably one of the things that drives some of my chiefs crazy sometimes is I go, I have an idea, and I think we can probably capitalize on this. And they always look at me and go, oh, here comes John with another trendy idea. Can we make it work, or we can't make it work? And I think that our organization, our professionals in the field, what makes us so successful is the fact that we can come up with really good creative ideas that keep us moving forward. In a few minutes, you're going to hear from a few of our committees and branches about what they're doing. But I want to share with you my excitement about our new Social Justice, Racial Equity, and Inclusion Committee. This is one of the new committees that we put together this year. And it's co-chaired by Dr. Maureen Doherty and Director Bill Tyler. And in a few minutes, they're just going to give you a little bit of a snippet on what they're doing. But this committee really, really excites me. I think that with everything that's going on, the timing of this is critical, and I don't want to steal too much of their thunder, so I'm just going to be quiet. The other committee that we started this year was our social media committee, and Shelby Bowers has just done an amazing job. If you haven't checked in with some of the things that are being put up on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram accounts, she has just done an amazing job, and I really want to applaud her for that. When I reached out to Shelby and said, can you do this? 5 days later, things were starting to hit on social media. I have a hard time keeping up with these things. And so I want to reach out to thank Shelby as well, because without her help, we really wouldn't be able to have the reach that we have had. We've really hit an all-time high with our social media. A couple of other announcements. The Leadership One Institute has extended its deadline until mid-August. So if you're still thinking about enrolling one of your staff, or perhaps enrolling yourself in the LI One Institute, we still have some space left. So I think August 13th, somewhere thereabouts, we're going to be extending that, and that'll be on the website. We still plan on hosting our annual conference in April. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. We have not canceled that conference. We canceled last April on this past fall's conference. But despite everything that's going on, I think I'm hopeful that we're still going to be able to meet in Ocean City for what's going to be a huge celebration. I think I've talked to my committee chairs for the conference committee. We've got some really cool things planned. So look forward to that. And in closing, I want to thank you, our Parks and Recreational professionals, and all of our corporate sponsors who work with MRPA, who support our mission, who get behind us, who take our trainings and really value what we do, what we can provide to all the professionals in the field. And with that, I'm going to ask, well, I think Chuck really briefly mentioned how we're doing financially. Chuck, thank you for managing our finances so well. I think we're on a good foot. We're going to ride through this pandemic and come out on the other end financially sound, and that's due to all the hard work of MRPA staff and our treasurer. And with that, I think we have a presentation or a committee report from the Rawls branch. So if you're ready, go ahead. Okay. Emily, why don't you give us a brief report on the conference?
Sure. Oh, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Yeah, like John had said, and the MRPA weekly updates has said, you know, after initially postponing our annual conference, we decided to cancel the 2020 conference. And I'd like to thank the 2019-2020 conference committee for all of their work over the past year. It is an amazing amount of work that it takes to plan a conference, including a team of over 35 people. And thank you all so much for your work, especially I'd like to thank Mike Coppersmith, my conference co-chair. Thank you, Mike. My current co-chair, Jake Chestnut, and I will be starting regular conference meetings again in August. So please reach out to us if you'd like to get involved. There's always room on the committee for a few more people. And keep an eye out for more information coming soon. And save the date for our 2021 conference, which will be April 13th through the 15th. Fingers crossed. Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Emily. I really look forward to working with you guys. I think Emily and I and Jake had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I expressed a little bit about what my vision was, I wanted to be for the conference. I think they're on board. It's going to be amazing. So Emily and Jake really want to thank you and reach out to the committee members to thank them in advance for, I think, what's going to be a grand reunion of all of our professionals. We haven't seen each other for a long time, so I'm looking forward to the high fives and hopefully the hugs. I don't know, but the high fives with gloves. With that, I want to turn it over to either Tara or Sean to talk a little bit about our training and education committee.
Sure thing, John. Thank you. So with everything that the COVID-19 pandemic threw at us, we kind of saw the need to respond quickly and transition all of our training efforts to Zoom. And I wanted to go through some specific stats here. We have provided 8 virtual learning opportunities since April. The total registration for those opportunities has been 769 registrations. So that comes in at an average of 96 participants per session. On the professional learning community side of things, Carrie and Derek have facilitated 14 PLCs since April. They've had 545 registrations, and that is an average of 39 participants per PLC. For Leadership Institute 1, like you said, the deadline has been pushed to August 14th, so please spread the word and get those applications in. And in the same vein of thought, excuse me, Mary Beth Dugan and her committee have been designing and planning Leadership Institute 2. There's been a survey that's going to be sent out to all past Leadership Institute graduates very soon, so please keep an eye for that. And aside from all that, my co-chair, Tara Stewart, and I are working to fill the fall and winter training calendars, so please reach out with any ideas that you may have. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks, Tara. You guys have done an amazing job. You know, when we first asked you to co-chair this committee, COVID didn't even exist. And once we got into the whole pandemic, you really stepped up to the plate and started thinking virtually. The product that you've turned out and the PLCs and all the trainings have just been phenomenal. I think our membership has really gotten a lot out of that. So with that, I want to turn it over to Director Bill Tyler to talk about our Social Justice, Racial Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Bill, you're on.
And good morning to everybody. How are you? Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Bill Tyler, Director, as John said, of Prince George's County Parks and Recreation, one of the best the parks and recreation in the country. As I wanted to put that out there. But I'd also like to just recognize Dr. Moe as the co-chair. We're working as co-chairs and we are loving working on this committee. I want to say to John and to our executive director for having such forward thinking. Before the circumstances that we find ourselves in the country now, John and the executive director thought that this would be one of the committees that would be very, very instrumental in MRPA. And I couldn't agree more. So John and Chuck, thank you for your forward thinking and your visioning on that. So just want to give a brief update. We have 4 objectives, and those objectives are to define social justice, racial equity, and inclusion. Objective 2 is identify small working committees, and that has been completed, which is events, training, and education, and bylaws and policy. Objective 2 is to create a meaningful program and trainings that are focused on the social justice, racial equity, inclusion related topics of MRPA. And objective 2B is to review the MRPA bylaws, research websites, and policies. Objective 3 is to apply these definitions and determine their meaning in relation to recreation and parks professionals. And objective 4 is to identify specific criteria that will broaden understanding and address the equality at all levels of the organization. So I want to say that the leaders of the subgroups that we have are doing a fantastic job at leading the committees. They've developed a work program that is really outstanding. I think that as we are moving forward, we're gathering more information in each one of those objectives, and we'll have that information for you at the next meeting. But also would like to put a plug in for an event that we have coming up on September 12th. And it is a rain date of September 13th. And John, I know this is near and dear to your heart. Did you want to speak on this yourself?
Bill, I don't want to steal your thunder, so I'm going to let you speak on this.
All right, so the committee came up with an idea that we would have a bike ride for social justice and racial equity from a point in Maryland close to the district line and 1600, just to represent our solidarity and our interest and support for social justice and racial equity and inclusion. So I want to put out a call to all of you that roll in anything that has wheels to join us to take that ride. We're looking at some routes now. It looks like it's about 9 to 11 miles one way. And we'd love to have anybody that's interested in participating in that to join in and let us know that you're interested. We've developed a logo. The team has developed a logo and a t-shirt, and we have extra bikes if people don't have bikes. So we really want to make this an exciting opportunity, but a serious opportunity given the state that we find ourselves in now. I think I've covered most of everything that we are doing on the Social Justice, Racial Equity and Inclusion Committee. And I'd like to ask Dr. Moe if she would have anything to add.
Thanks, Director Tyler. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure working with you. And I just enjoy seeing the many faces that I miss so much. And I can't wait to high five and hug you. So get ready. In regards to other things that are going on in our committee, Edith Michelle is heading up our Bylaws and Policy Committee and is doing a phenomenal job. And one thing that we're doing there is we're reviewing the MRPA current bylaws. We have a recommendation for instituting an equity ambassador that will go on and will be a permanent possible appointee position from here forward to ensure that all MRPA events are totally inclusive. So we're looking to add that and other language in the bylaws to make sure that we really walk the walk And we are also examining the 44 state organizations around the country, the state park and recreation associations, as well as NRPA, to identify what positions they have and how they are aligned with various equity issues, and to really collect all of the data we can and make sure that when we compile that MRPA is really on the top in regards to racial equity and social justice and inclusion. So in closing, I would like to put a call out. We have 14 amazing members on our committee, and then we have our 3 subcommittees. So we're really a strong working committee. We would like to put a call out for someone that does not reside or represent an agency in the metropolitan region. We have strong representation from Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Howard County, and we would like to go beyond that and ask for representation from the LGBTQ community, because we feel that that is an area that we don't feel is represented on our committee currently, and we would put a call out for an individual who would like to step forward and ensure that, again, we can be totally inclusive in what we're doing. So if you have that, if you can message me, I'll put my email down there, and send me an email, that would be great. And I know other people have reached out and wanted to be on the committee, but we just really wanted to ensure that we keep it at a good size, and so we can really focus and stay working. But we'll keep you apprised of our position and as we progress. So thanks so much, and have a great day.
Well, thank you guys. That's amazing. This is a very exciting committee, and like Dr. Doherty and Director Tyler said, if you're interested in helping out, please get in touch with them, and there will definitely be stuff to do. So in conclusion for today, and I don't want to keep folks too long, we're getting on to lunchtime. I want to say a final thanks to the MRPA staff. You guys have done an exemplary job this year, pulling everything together, the newsletter, the website, the Zoom meetings. I know Adrian has been our host on many of these Zoom meetings, and Adrian, you've done great. The newsletter is fantastic. If you get a chance, read it every week. I do put a little snippet in there about what's going on. And then I have one favor for everybody. If you could send to MRPA pictures of your staff working. My theme this year is Hats Off to You, and that'll be our theme for the conference. And I want to recognize folks at the end of the year for all the hard work that they've done. So if you've got pictures and maybe some descriptions, I need to know where they are and who these folks are and what they're doing. Really would appreciate that. We're trying to put a little presentation together for the conference, and pictures say 1,000 words. So with that, Chuck, if you have anything you want to add, I'm going to end the meeting. Sorry we couldn't eat crabs and have some cold beverages, but I really enjoyed seeing everybody. So Chuck, anything you want to close with?
No, I'm going out for a crab cake though. Thanks,
well, great.
John.
Thank you. Good. Well, thank you, everybody. And again, thank you, Rich and Terry and Holly, for all your help. We look forward to seeing you in some future trainings this fall. So take care, everybody.